Hey everybody, I'm Jodi Carlton and I'm a neurodiverse relationship expert. Today I want to talk about how Cassandra Syndrome can impact autistic partners. Now, I did another video last week about Cassandra Syndrome, and although I emphasized at the beginning of the video that this can happen to both, I didn't make it clear enough throughout the video that autistic individuals are also very impacted and can experience a lot of trauma in a neurodiverse relationship. So let's talk about it. But first, I want to clarify something with you. When I talk about neurotypical individuals or autistic individuals, I'm not referring to all neurotypicals or all autistic individuals or ADHD or whoever I'm referencing. Not everybody is going to experience the same thing. What we do see are patterns. We see patterns that a lot of neurotypicals may experience or a lot of autistics may experience, but you're not going to have all of those traits in common. So I just wanted to make that really clear here from the beginning that I'm not talking about all of you. I want to emphasize that all of my videos, this entire channel, my blog, my socials are all about uniting us and connecting us, helping us to understand one another. This channel is not meant to be divisive or blaming or villainizing or finger pointing, because that doesn't help any of us. That doesn't help us to understand each other. It doesn't help us to understand ourselves or our relationship. So as you watch this video, I want you to know, if you don't know this about me already, that I'm ADHD. I have autistic family members that I love and cherish. And so when I'm referring to autistic individuals, I'm referring to my people, and I'm not villainizing them in any way. And I do believe that neurodiverse relationships can and are possible, that it's very possible for people to live in harmony and have satisfying relationships. I also know, being a relationship coach and therapist for 20-something years, that it's very hard, that all relationships can be pretty hard. But when you add the layer of neurodiversity and you don't understand each other for lots of different reasons, that's a layer that can make or break a relationship. This channel, this video today even, is about uniting us and helping us to understand each other, and all of my videos are that way. So a quick review of Cassandra Syndrome, if you're not familiar with it. The term itself comes from a Greek myth. I'm not, by the way, a historian, and I'm not big on my Greek mythology. I just know that this is where it came from. There was a figure in Greek mythology, Cassandra, who was able to see the future. And I can't remember if it was a gift or a curse, or I don't remember why she could see the future, but she could. The problem is nobody believed her. She could see the future. Nobody really understood or knew that she could see the future. And so nobody ever believed her, which left her feeling very isolated and like she was crazy, because she knew what she was seeing and nobody believed her. Maxine Aston is a professional provider in the UK who first started seeing this syndrome in neurotypical wives who were married to autistic men. So she's the one that identified Cassandra Syndrome as relating to this trauma that can be experienced. We've now since recognized that this is not just exclusive to neurotypical wives who are married to autistic husbands. This trauma of being misunderstood and to feeling invalidated can happen to any partner in a neurodiverse relationship. So let's talk about how this might influence and impact an autistic partner. So can autistic individuals experience Cassandra Syndrome? Yes, they can. We cannot ignore the fact that autistic partners also can and do experience significant trauma in relationships. Autistic partners can often feel very emotionally isolated and even gaslighted themselves. Their realities are called into question, and neurotypical partners oftentimes have no awareness that their autistic partner is having a very legitimate, different experience. So this can leave an autistic partner feeling very criticized and judged and isolated and gaslighted themselves because their own reality is being called into question. I'm going to put a comment here from my other Cassandra video where someone commented, "I'm a late diagnosed autistic woman married to a non-autistic man." So she's autistic, he's neurotypical. She says, "I have always been steamrolled in all my relationships because my perspective was never seen as valid." And here again, I want to say, in my previous video, I did mention that this happens, but I didn't clarify, and I want to clarify now, that this isn't exclusive to all neurotypicals and not autistic individuals. This is an experience that many autistic people have as well. I want to affirm and validate all of you who are autistic. Maybe you saw my video before, maybe not, but I want to affirm and validate all of you who are listening that this happens to you as well. And if you are a neurotypical partner watching, it's important to know that although you are only experiencing your own distress and your own discomfort, that doesn't mean that your partner is not also experiencing it as well. And the same goes for all of you autistic folks as well. It goes both ways. Sometimes it's not always happening to both partners. So this is another thing. In some relationships, in some neurodiverse relationships, it will be the neurotypical partner that experiences Cassandra syndrome, and the autistic partner won't be experiencing trauma. In other relationships, like the one that this person described, the autistic person is experiencing trauma and the neurotypical person is not. Here's another comment I got on the other video. So this person says, yeah, I definitely see this happening infinitely more for the autistic than the neurotypical. Thus, what breaks down our autoimmune system even further, then we're stuck with so much more trauma and stress-related issues. So again, I want to affirm that this distress and stress response from being in a neurodiverse relationship very much happens for autistic individuals who can end up with autoimmune difficulties or medical issues. What I do want to say here, though, is it's not, and I'm saying this to the neurotypicals as much as the autistics, it's not about me versus you or us versus them. I want us to shift our narrative, you guys, from this us versus them. We have it worse than you. When we take on that idea that my pain is worse than your pain, my experience is worse than yours. No, there's no way to quantify that. There's no way to quantify whose experience is worse and whose experience is causing more pain and more trauma. Both experiences are valid and real. That's what we need to focus on, is that both partners can experience trauma. What we want to do is start to understand each other so that this trauma is not happening anymore. Let's understand each other and recognize that the difficulties and the challenges of misunderstanding each other, miscommunication, the miscommunication oftentimes is just caused by the different ways the brain is perceiving the environment, is interpreting language, is the way the brain is processing thought or feelings. There's not a right or wrong in that. It's different. And if either partner takes the position, my side, the way I feel or experience is the right way, or my pain is worse than yours, then that's dividing. And that's going to drive wedges in your relationship and also with others who are trying to understand these differences and growth. And we need to have more of a growth orientation, a growth mindset, in order to help all of us, to be less traumatized. Here's one last comment that I think actually represents what I'm saying about this need to recognize that both sides of this experience distress. And so this person says, in my experience, it not only depends on the cognitive empathy or the theory of mind, which is that ability to recognize that someone else's experience is legit and valid. But she says it not only depends on the cognitive empathy or theory of mind and general emotional intelligence of the autistic partner, but also the level of awareness on this double empathy problem on both parts. So the double empathy is recognizing that we're both experiencing difficulties. This is not just me experiencing difficulty because of you. This is my problem. You are creating a problem for me. But it's recognizing I'm also creating difficulty for you. Who I am, the way I think, the way my brain works is also very challenging for you. And that's very legitimate and valid for you. That's the double empathy, which we call it the double empathy problem because oftentimes one partner sees themselves as the victim of the other partner and doesn't recognize that it actually is going both ways. This person goes on to say, I was in a relationship with a neurotypical man who didn't know much about autism and had little awareness of this. While I already had my whole life to figure out, and that I experience things differently from the neurotypicals around me. So I was more impacted by him not understanding my different point of view. So he didn't understand autism. He didn't understand all of the difficulties and challenges that she was experiencing by being autistic. And it wasn't just her having to be different than him, but also just from everybody in her world. But then she goes on to say, meanwhile, in a relationship of friends with her having ADHD and him being autistic with very low cognitive empathy, she was more impacted by him not being able to understand her point of view. So in that situation, they're both neurodivergent. She's ADHD, he's autistic, but has low cognitive empathy, which means he really doesn't recognize that her perspective is valid. This is where we feel gaslighted. It's not actual gaslighting, because gaslighting is for the purpose of making you doubt your reality. I want you to doubt your reality. So in this last example, the autistic man was the one that couldn't recognize his ADHD partner's perspective. And so she experienced more trauma. And that's a neurodivergent individual who's experiencing trauma. So the main point here is Cassandra syndrome has been historically used to identify when neurotypicals experience trauma in a neurodiverse relationship. But just because we talk about the neurotypical experience and we refer to it as Cassandra syndrome doesn't mean, at least when I do, it doesn't mean that we're dismissing that the autistic individuals also can experience some pretty significant trauma. We don't typically call that Cassandra syndrome. Do we need to change our terms and labels? Maybe. At this point in time, we haven't. So I'm here to help educate and help you all understand and know what all this means. So I hope that now you have clarity. Thanks for watching, you guys. I appreciate your comments, and it is my goal to respond to as many of you as I possibly can. I can't get to everybody. There's just too many. I would love to hear what you all have to say in the comments. Talk to me. I'd love to hear from my autistic folks, my neurotypical folks, what your perspectives are, what your experiences have been, and any insights maybe you've gained from this video. I love it when the comments can add to the discussion and lead to another video like this so we can talk about it even further. So keep the comments coming.